Hi, it's Kim from the Shamrock Quilt Studio, and today we're working on our Block of the Month project, and we're talking about our block for September. And probably in your area, the children are going back to school, and we see school buses everywhere, back to school sales, school supplies, and we've got those little ones grabbing their book bags and their lunch boxes and heading off to school. So we're going to use that school theme for our block this month. We're going to get started just after this. And welcome back to the Shamrock Quilt Studio. Now we're going to start off with a little bit of preparation for our project. And today's project, we're going to create two main elements and then we're going to put them on our 15-inch block. And one I'm going to show you a little bit about how I did, and the other one I'm just going to tell you. It's very simple. I think you'll be able to handle it fine. One is hand stitching. One is machine stitching. So let's start with the prep for the hand stitching first. We're going to be making a large apple to put on this project, and the first thing we're going to need is a stem. So I've prepared a little bit of starch here just to make this a little bit easier, and I'm just going to put a little bit of it on this scrap of brown fabric, and it's probably 1 inch by 2 inches, something like that. And all I'm going to do is fold down, let's see, make sure you can see this. Yes, you can. Fold down one end and kind of starch that, press it in place. And then I'm going to fold down one other side. And it's so damp that it's sticking to the little iron. Okay, now we're beginning to get it. I think I put a little bit too much on there. And I probably could use a little clean off on here as well. We've been doing a lot of starching here in the last couple of days. And then the other side we're going to turn under, and we're actually going to make a little bit of a V shape. We're not going to make a perfect rectangle. It's going to be just a slight little V, and I'm going to trim that off just a little bit on one end. And you may have to tuck in that end. Let me get a pin. Just a little bit so it doesn't peek out the top. And just a drop there. Because an apple stem is not a strictly perpendicular thing. It's a living vine that apple grew on, or a stem, and sometimes it's irregular in shape. So there we go. Super simple, not too complicated, a little bit wider at the top than the bottom, and all three edges have been folded under. That's what we're going to start with. We'll put that right there. And it doesn't really matter how long it is because you can adjust its size by tucking it into that apple. And then the other thing we're going to make is a little leaf. And I just freehanded a leaf shape. And again, we're going to use our starch liquid there with a little paintbrush. And that's about at a 1 to 2 or 1 to 3 mixture with some liquid starch. And we're just going to put it on and give it a minute to soak into the fabric. This one doesn't. This piece of fabric may not have been pre-washed, so it may have that sizing on it still. And if you make this and you can leave it someplace where it can be undisturbed, it's good for a couple of days. What will begin to happen is the water will evaporate and it'll get kind of thick, and you can add some more water. I wouldn't keep it more than about 4 or 5 days though. I think we're on day 3 and it's still working fine. Okay, so we're going to lay that little template on top, And then we're just going to start folding. And my iron tells me it's ready. I love this little mini iron for these things like this because I don't have to go stand at the ironing board. I don't have to try to maneuver a large iron to do these little tiny tasks. Now, if you've not caught any of my other shows on the starch basting applique, what you're going to learn is that when you're using just a piece of paper as the template, the paper is going to get wet and it's going to want to fold over on you. And what I did just then was I pulled that piece of paper out because we had only ironed it on one side. So I pulled it out and ironed it by itself, and that allowed that paper to dry out. And then I was able to stick it right back in there and keep going. Okay, and we're going to need a little bit more starch here where it's dried out a bit. This is the craziest fabric because usually as soon as I put the starch on a fabric, it just soaks it up. And this fabric doesn't seem to be doing that. And then I'm going to fold this end to end and then start folding it down just like that to meet up with the other end, and then we're going to press it. If you get a sharp fold in this, just unfold it and refold it again. But a little bit of a sharp thing is not a bad idea. Okay, and then you can adjust in your stitching to get exactly the shape you want. But just that easy, we've been able to do the leaf. And it's a little curled now because the paper's curled, but that's okay. We're going to sit it there to cool off and to dry thoroughly. And then I am going to, I think we're done with this. Just move it over out of the way. We're going to need this. That was hard to get out of there. This is our 15-inch square. Okay, so right now we have a stem and a leaf, but we've got no apple. You can use the template that I'm going to provide on a PDF. Email me at shamrockquiltstudio@gmail.com and I'll be happy to share that for about 3 weeks until the 15th of September. So any requests through the 15th, I will email that to you. And what we've done is we've taken that apple shape and we've cut a piece of red fabric and just any kind of backing that you want to use. I think this was just a piece of light gray that I had available. It's just a scrap. And I stitched right along the edge of the apple shape all the way around. And then I clipped it, leaving about 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Whoops, no peeking. You can see how that's done. Now, if we take this off, here's what we have. I've got my red stitching line to match the front of my apple and my backing. And how we're going to do this is we're going to separate these two, and then we're going to clip a little hole or a little slit in the back of this backing. Make sure you don't catch the front. And I'm cutting mine about 1.5 inches. So now we've got that hole in it, and we can take and turn that whole piece through that little hole. We just need to take our time. Don't get in a rush. I'm going to turn this back on, and we're going to try to press it there instead of going to the big iron. Okay, it's beginning to take shape. I don't know if you can tell that or not. Okay, so that's what we have right now. And then we're going to take an object that's pointy but not sharp. And I like to use the scissors sometimes because they will not poke through on a pair of scissors like this. Through that hole, and we're just pressing it out. And because we put all those clips in there, we should be able to press that out pretty well so that we get that nice smooth design. Okay, so we've got that pretty well. I'm going to try now to press it. Put that over there. We don't want to get that involved with this. And let's see what we have. And what we're going to use is we're going to use a big straight pin. Any place we've got a flat area to just pull it out and make the shape we're looking for. See how we've made that nice curve there? And then we'll press it. And you want to make sure that your lining fabric stays underneath. You want to keep it hidden. If you think you're going to have problems being able to do that, then line it with the same color and then you won't have that worry. If you don't get it pressed just right, it won't make a difference. A little bit at a time. All the way around. If you're going to stitch this on, applique on by hand, just keep in mind too that if your lining shows just a little bit, when you're making those stitches by hand, you can pull that top layer of fabric right over that lining when you're stitching. You're just going to catch that top layer and bring the stitch over the bottom layer and into your backing. And right now we are almost halfway around. I'm just trying to do a really good job of turning it for you. Okay, we're coming back up the other side. Those longer sides with the sweeping curves are much easier than a sharp curve. I need some kind of gizmo to hold that iron on the table because the cord wants to pull it off every single time. Okay, I think that's going to do it. Now, it needs a little roll with the lint roller. But I think there's our nice little apple shape. And then we're going to take those two little pieces that we just made and we're going to stick that stem in there. And I'm going to pin it just right here. It's pinning the stem to the apple. And then we're going to take that leaf. Be sure to take out the paper. And I'm going to stick that leaf right there. That's going to be just cute as a button. So that the leaf is going to be on the stem. Okay, let's move this here so you can see it just a little bit better. Nice little apple. Okay, so that's going to be our apple that we put onto our project. Now let's move on to the main element. And when I was thinking about school, the thing that really, for me, you know, back to school when you're middle school or you're high school, that's just something you do. But the cuties are the ones just starting to school that are just so excited for that new adventure that they're going to. They've got their new lunchbox. They've never had one before. They've got a book bag with pencils and supplies and their paper. They get to write on their paper. And that first, second, third grade paper is just so emblematic to me of back to school that I decided I was going to make that paper for this project. So I took a piece of the lightest gray fabric I could find, and I used my machine to stitch those writing lines onto the fabric. And I put my stitch out pretty big. Let's see. Here we go. Here's exactly what it was. No, that's for the lettering. But I put it out at a nice long stitch and about a ½ inch between them. And I marked that on the fabric with a little disappearing marker. I was going to use pencil, but I thought pencil might show up. So this particular piece, let's see how big it is. It is almost 11 inches wide and it is almost 8 inches long. So it's the same size and shape of the paper that I recall my kids using. Now, my daughter, who is in the elementary school business, informs me they don't use this paper anymore. But I think for our purposes, we're pretty cool using it. So you can see that it's got a little blue line, a little blue line, and a red line, and then blue, blue, red, blue, blue, red, all the way down. And then I took my machine also and made a capital A and a small a on this paper. And I used a satin stitch or a zigzag stitch on this. And just so you know, it was a 2.0 width and a 0.3 length. So it was bigger than a buttonhole, but that same size and shape. And I want to make sure that you can see that really well here. I'm actually going to hold it up a little bit, see if that works better. And I'll turn it this way too so you can see that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our 15-inch square, and as usual we're going to be working to find the center of this. And we're just going to use today a little creasing method to do that, because we've got our pieces ready to go. And there's no right and wrong way to place these on here. You're going to do it how you like it. But now we can see where the center of it is, and we want to make sure that we have at least a ½ inch on each side, because that's where our seam is going to go. And we want to be sure that if we place our paper or our apple further than those seam lines, we're going to cut it off when we put it together with the quilt or the pillow. So you can if you want to, but just know that that will happen. Oh, one other thing. On the paper, after I got all those seam lines in, I starched it and turned the edges under so that it would be even all the way around and have finished edges. So you can see I've got about a ½ inch on some of them, and up at the top I have just a little bit less than that. But it is turned under and it's nice and even. Now the stitches did kind of pull in the fabric a little bit, so when I go to sew it in, I'm probably going to need to keep that in mind. So I'm going to place mine at a little bit of a diagonal like that. And then I'm going to put my apple right here. And that's going to be our September design. And while we're chatting, I'm going to put a little bit of applique glue on here so I hold it in place. I've not used this in a couple of days, so it may be clogged up. can tell you one thing, that is not a straight pen. Oh, there we go. It's ready to go. Okay, so we're just going to put a little bit there on the corner. On the corner. And my center is right about here, just so you know. Now that little piece of gray fabric is pretty stiff, and that's because we used that starch. I was trying to get it straightened out a bit. I'm going to pull it a little bit as we do that. And again, going back to this whole concept of this quilt is not about perfection. It is about fun. Fun and memories. Okay. And I'm also going to put just a tad of glue under this lining, just to kind of hold it in place. Put little drops all the way around. And then up our stem. Okay, and then when we put this down, we need to put it right where we want it. It is repositionable, but you're going to have to get it wet and then dry it before you can move it again. So let's see, I think I want it right about there. I always find the bottom of the bottle is a good thing to kind of tap it in place. And we're still cardboard. Okay, I don't know how well that's holding, so I'm going to put a couple of pins in it, just temporarily. Not sure how well that stem glued down, but I think it will hold well enough that we can do our hand stitching, or if you're wanting to machine stitch this would be really easy to do. You just need to put a thread in that's going to match that gray fabric, and then I would do the gray thread for the paper, maybe the leaf and the stem, and then make sure to do a red for your apple so it matches. Now, if you would like, you can also use a little bit of white thread, either by hand or machine, to put a little reflection on that apple. Would be cute. Or if you wanted to add some more embellishments, be my guest. This is your project to create how you like and change it up how it works best for you. But there's our September block of the month. It's back to school. I hope you enjoyed this, and this is working along towards either a quilt for the year with a block for each month, or you can take this and turn it into a pillow cover for a small pillow. You can adjust the sizes if necessary. If you want a larger pillow, Maybe even add some more embellishments or more designs to this, however you see fit. Thanks for joining us today. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing, and we'll see you next time, you guessed it, at the Shamrock Quilt Studio. Bye.